Hello my scribes, welcome back to another video from my writers about K-dramas. Now if you haven't seen it already, go watch Startup. This foreign series has it all. Solid character arcs, breaking the lead man stereotype, and turning tropes on their head. And if you didn't realize by the title of this video, the leading men are the sole topic of our talk today. Or rather, the reasons why Mr. Han is every lady's favorite unlovable guy. Up ahead, there will be spoilers in order to talk about what the show did right, so go watch it first if you haven't. If you have, or are just curious, let's have our chat. The Korean drama is centered around a young woman who joins the same competition as her childhood pen pal, bringing them together to build a startup company in the middle of their blossoming romance. Here's the twist. Their mentor is the original writer of the letters that she used to get sent as a child. Then ensues the dramatic love triangle and epic dynamic between two drastically different men. So why did we want Mr. Han to win over Nam Do-san, the totally awesome swoon-worthy dude who was just a bit awkward and more sensitive? Let's break it down. Why do we even like the selfish Mr. Han? As a writer, our primary job is to create likable main characters, and we do this by giving backstory. With this, as the writer, we're creating empathy for him. Not to mention, he was our typical stubborn, hot-headed, good-looking CEO. All the signs that he's our main man. Well, we started with his childhood and hers, and we followed him during this whole situation, setting us up to care about him and his character arc. Plus, we were following a formula, the general K-drama formula. So because right in the first episode we get a real big taste of Mr. Han's really sad upbringing, we tend to grow closer. We know that he is this sad child who needs some sort of a redemption. He needs to have something that's going to show him that he can be loved. And so this is what we start out as the perception with him. Very first episode, very first few actual images that we're seeing. And for this, we become pretty attached to him. So attached to him that we're really pretty much rooting for him the whole time. I mean, I can't even say I feel wrong for wanting him to be the main lead that she falls in love with. But at the same time, we did follow him through this whole setup, and I don't know if we got a real clear payoff for him. Clearly, we know that by the end of this, someone has to win Dalmi's heart. Whenever we start in this K-drama formula, we know that there's going to be one person who falls for the main character, Dalmi, and who has her best intentions, her best everything at heart, and truly has to face being this stubborn, rich, brooding person and pretty much suffer through most of this to become a better person. Well, we know that now in this particular series, he does all this and he does change, but he does not win the girl at the end. And that is because he has a separate story that was with the grandmother and being loved from a parental perspective. And this, to me, was something that the writers went for instead of Dalmi being his saving grace. Now again, because we did kind of sit there for most of the beginning with him in mind and him walking through the rain and how he grew up pretty much alone, we know that he is someone we want to have a happy ending for. And this is pretty misleading because most times we see something like this set up, we know that we're following this formula of, okay, man is alone and needs to learn to grow up and be better and not be selfish and be loved. And we've got this woman who learns to become ambitious and she learns to, love and reciprocate that with this character, and their relationship pretty much solves their arc. But in this series, we actually don't have that happen with these two main characters, even though they are the very first ones we see. So because we saw Mr. Han as the biggest reward, we immediately wanted him to win. One was successful, one wasn't successful, one had a business, one wanted a business, one didn't even really have a backstory as far as parents. I'm not sure what happened there. And so he was always alone. The other one was always with parents who just adored him and took care of him, but also put a lot of pressure on him. And then the other one fell in love with the main character, and the other one fell in love with the main character. So if you think about it, both arcs were pretty much exactly the same. But because we're wired for regular formulas in this romantic K-drama space, we actually saw Mr. Han as the one who had the greatest reward, because we saw a side of Dusan where he had friends and he had family, and that made us feel like he was a little bit with less to lose if he didn't get the girl in the end. And that's just my thoughts on that. I could be completely wrong, but in my experience, whenever you're watching these sort of shows, you tend to want to identify a little bit harder and feel a little more sorry for the person who has it worse off. And usually that's the rich jerk who doesn't really have a great family and who is treated terribly by pretty much everybody around him and has really kind of like no friends. So yeah, sorry, Mr. Han. Now, of course, we weren't convinced with the changes when they veered off from the sensitive man versus the masculine man. Now, in one corner, we had the stereotypical masculine man who had pretty much all social iconic things about him that were endearing and made him super charming as well, even though he was kind of a brooding jerk. And then we had the sensitive dude who, while he did understand it was okay to cry, he actually felt a little bit like the weaker person up against this masculine man. But of course, our masculine dude ends up learning to do a little bit of crying and sensitivity work, and that's kind of confusing for us too. But because we have two different characters who had very opposite traits from each other, but had the same fond love for Dalmi, we actually got to see the reverse happen in most of these shows, where instead of the side character not winning the woman and the sensitive creature not winning this woman's heart, we actually thought that the masculine man would do that, but no. Now, while the writers went ahead and they made this totally obvious choice completely unobvious to the rest of us, we actually got a kick when Dalmi did change and go ahead and pick the sensitive character who actually was always there for her and shared these moments. Although I do find that if we would have put Mr. Han in the same moments with her, we probably would have had a tie. But if they decide to do a second season, Mr. Han could really get his shot in finally. What I did find realistic about this was Mr. Han did pretty much confess his love, but retreated a lot of the time, even the years when he spent with her afterwards, which was kind of a nice touch because a lot of people probably wouldn't pressure a girl to pretty much choose him instead of the other dude if she really wasn't feeling him. Now that I've gone through my list of things, I just wanted to show you pretty much typically why we feel more invested in a character and how it impacts the audience when we write a certain way. This in no way makes the true ending less of a good one. It ended pretty realistically. Let me know how you felt about the final choice below for Dalmi, and I'll see you in the future scribes.